Well, I was into trains. Started as a kid. I liked trains and buses. My dad was a bus driver for the SWNA, and he drove the Tecumseh line. And as a kid, my brother and sister and myself would we would go out. He would take us into Windsor, back to Tecumseh. We'd have an ice cream at the corner of Les Bronce and Tecumseh Road there. There was a little ice cream shop. And then we'd drive back and he would drop us off in front of our house, which you could do that. And that's how I sort of got started into the buses. And as I got into the buses and researching the SWNA, I got into the streetcars. But one of the big reasons I got into the streetcars was back when they were moving from the Kildare garage to where they are today. They were cleaning out the basement of the garage. And a friend of mine who worked in the body shop, Dave Young, was given the task to clean all this stuff out. And they were maps of the streetcar lines, about 30 feet long in that. And he said, I got a friend that might be interested in this stuff. Can I take it? He says, as long as you get it off the property. And that's how I got started. I got these maps at home, and holy crap, I'm looking at them. I never knew how the streetcar system even worked in Windsor up till that point. I knew how the buses did, but not the streetcars. And that's when I got these maps, and I started going through all this stuff, and then I started doing a little more research on it, and that's how it got started. Well, you go back to 1886, there was a gentleman, there was a commissioner for the city of Windsor, or town of Windsor at the time, and he had been in England and saw this little trolley running up and down the beach, and that's how he got started. He brought pictures back, and he mentioned it to some people, and that's Vanderpool was a gentleman from an engineer, electrical engineer, and he was in Detroit at the time, and they got talking to him, and he was hired to build a car, and they built it in Walkerville, in a little car, and actually it started out as a trial. They were just moving it. The Vanderpool pulled the lever to see if it would move out of the barn, and as it pulled out of the barn, he got outside. He kept going. And the track was laid down Riverside Drive, all the way from roughly the Peabody Bridge down to the British American Hotel at Olette and Riverside Drive. And the owner chased them down on a horse and buggy to try to catch him, and that met up there when he was inside the hotel having a beer. But that's how it got started. And then that was in May of 1886. The official opening was June the 4th was a trial, and then June the 7th the official opening. And it had its issues, and they had to sometimes use horses to pull the car down because of that. But that was the first electric streetcar in Canada, because there was no other electrification used to move cars here in Canada. Well, you had one that, I'm going to say, start off with the Tecumseh line, which basically came out of Ferry Street in the Riverside Drive. At that time, I think they called it Sandwich Street. And it would run down, head east on Riverside Drive, and go all the way down to Sturbane, and would turn right onto Sturbane and go up to Ottawa Street. That's what Wyandotte was called at that time, because Wyandotte did not go right through from Walker Road to Sturbane. So they had to go that way. And then from Sturbane, heading east on Ottawa Street, or Wyandotte, it ran all the way to Edward Street in Riverside, veered to the left, and then went on a private right-of-way and all the way to Little River, And then from the little river, it went across the river and then stayed along. At that time, there was a big canal that was on the south side of Riverside Drive. And then on the south side of the canal was the streetcar tracks. So the car ran along that track all the way to Lesbronce, where it turned and went south on Lesbronce, on the west side of Lesbronce Road, all the way up to the railroad tracks. And there used to be a Shoppers Drug Mart up there. That was the loop and station where the car would loop around to go back to Windsor and follow it back. Like the first one ran between Walkerville and Windsor, and as time went on, it expanded. It ended up going through the Amherstburg line would have gone through Anderton into Amherstburg that way, Sandwich West out at points. Same with the Tecumseh line went through Sandwich East. And then you had a few other different municipalities were Roseland and trying to think what Walker Road and that. These were different municipalities. There was a total of 9 of them, municipalities that were involved with the streetcar system. Because like I said, you had the one streetcar that ran up Willette Avenue, up to the Willette and Tecumseh, and there was a racetrack up there and looped around to come back down. No. The streetcars ended in 1939. What really caused, you got to remember, in 1920, the streetcar system was actually run at the time by the Detroit United Railway, the owner, and they also operated the Detroit Street Railway in Detroit. And they bought the SW&A. And as time went on, there was a gentleman called Sir Adam Beck from the Ontario government, and he had this idea of connecting all the cities in Ontario by electric cars at that time. And hydroelectric, or as they were called then, they bought this system from the Detroit United Railway on behalf of all the municipalities that it served. And then by 1919, they decided they wanted to get out of it. So the hydroelectric at that time bought it, like I said, on behalf of the municipalities, and they started to operate it. And they had to do a lot of improvements to the line because the line it's in poor shape. And as time went on, by 1938, it was turned over to the city, and the city had there was millions of dollars owed where they never showed a profit. They were showing a profit on paper, but never really had profit. And the decision was, they brought the Ontario government, who guaranteed the loans, put W.H. Furlong in charge of the system. And he had to come up with an idea on how to improve the system, either rebuild it back as streetcars or do at that time, which some systems were doing, into buses. And so in 1938, he decided to go with buses to replace, because the cost would have been, in 1938, would have been over $7 million to rehab the whole streetcar system. So they decided to go with the buses, which was a lot cheaper in that. And to give you an example, in 1938, when the first line to go was the Amherstburg line. And they put a bus on there. They ran the bus and the streetcar, and they ran for 1 week. And after the first week, Furlong took the streetcar off because nobody wanted to ride the streetcar, they wanted to ride the bus, and it was faster. Same price and faster and more comfortable. Well, there's probably still tracks in the roads, some of the roadways around on Windsor, as you know, over the years, and that, because I mean, they found them at the roundabout at University of Riverside Drive. They found them on Wyandotte Street around Lincoln and Gladstone a few years back when they started to rebuild the road, and that. So they will find them out there. You see, when the Amherstburg line shut down, they tore the rails up and the ties. But in the city, it was easier to pave over the tracks than to tear them up at the time. Where out on the, like the Tecumseh line, they tore them up, the rail up, and they reused it, you know. And that was one thing Furlong did. He tried to tear up the rail as much as possible because he could sell that for scrap and make some money to put back in, you know. So they reused them. Same with the trucks that came off the cars. They were all sold to other systems because when you bought the streetcar, you bought just the body and the interior. That's how it came. Nothing else. You had all the seats and everything inside that you got. That's what you got, you know. But the trucks were where they could make some money off it. Well, actually, most of your streetcar operators did not know how to drive a automobile because they lived in the city, like I'm going to say Walkerville, wherever, and they could walk out and catch a public transit with no problem at all. And that, and now everybody's got to have a car, and that's the part of the problem. You know, we can spend billions on transit systems. We're not going to carry people. You know, but no, the streetcar system was very good at the time in the city of Windsor. It carried people, and people relied on it. I'm going to give you an example. During the, you know, in the buses, during the war years, Second World War, they advertised in the paper for the women that wanted to go downtown to do shopping, to do it after 11 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Do your shopping then, so you wouldn't interfere with the plants that were making war material. And Ford, Chrysler, and GM, one might start at 7 o'clock, the next one might start at 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock in the morning. They staggered the shifts because they couldn't get equipment, new equipment, because everything was going to the war. So what they did is they staggered it and utilized that bus or streetcar better to carry people. The car itself was positioned there. It got moved from closer to the railroad tracks across the highway and brought down Belle River Road and apparently put there. And then they just built a house over top of the car. They did cut one window out and added a back room to it in that, and where the front, but the front of the car, the day we found it, the whole front of the car was sitting in the carport. That's how we found it. When we pulled in the driveway, and I said to John, John, we found the car. And we had been looking for 4 weeks on that. And we found it. And all they did, when we went inside, they had some drywall attached to the inside of the wall. But your water pipes for the kitchen ran along the wall, and that they weren't buried. And same with the electrical, it was just hidden, temporary, you know. And when they took off the drywall on the inside, they found all the old windows, and there was none of them broken, other than the two that they had taken out to create a doorway in that. So I was there, and when they started to tear the outside off, and I knew roughly where the fleet number should be and where the herald would be. And so I stood at this one spot and I said, let's start here. So it's either here or it's going to be at the other end. And we they started to take off the wood slowly, and as we got to it, they pulled it back, and there was 351, the number. So I knew it had to be 351 to 354 because it had a smoking compartment in it at one time. And that's what they used on the, I call them interwoven lines, the Tecumseh line and the Amherstburg line. So people could smoke. Other than that, you could not smoke on any streetcar in the city. Well, there again, I had good contacts at Transit Windsor over the years, and when they would retire a bus and scrap it, if something there was something I would like off it, I would ask. And one of the Orion ones was being scrapped, and I said, "Can mind if I take it?" Well, you got your tools? Out I went, and I got it. And I've got a number of the roll signs like that, but that one came off Orion one, and that's my favorite. But a lot of them have a lot of the old signs, like I was telling you earlier. You got Hiram Walker's, you got Dougal, you got Darwin Center. People, if they know what it is, in that, and Malden, these Roseland, these are all routes at one time that buses operated on. And they're all on these because that's how old these are. They're probably 25 years old or 30 years old, maybe more on that. This one, and that's how I got it. And Drouillard being my name, and Drouillard Road was a relative, two brothers. So the family. So I like to have it.
Yeah.
So. But and then you asked me about the SWNA signs. That sign is the exact sign that they had on the streetcars. If you look at the photos of 351, I think they actually kept that piece from the side to show. That is the herald that's been on the SWNA streetcars and buses until 1978 or 77. So and that is real gold plated on it. So they weren't cheap back in those days.